It begins quietly, so subtly, you barely notice it at first. You've heard it before, right? You're so mature for your age. You're so responsible. You're an old soul. People would say it with a smile, maybe even a sense of pride. And you took those words in. You wore them like a badge of honor, didn't you? Maybe you felt a sense of pride too, like you had this rare quality that set you apart. It felt like a compliment. After all, who doesn't want to be seen as wise beyond their years? But then deep down, something didn't feel quite right. It wasn't just the compliments. There was a heaviness to it, a weight that you couldn't shake, even though no one else seemed to notice. As if the title of responsible wasn't something you could simply put down at the end of the day. It followed you, shaped you, even defined you. And you began to wonder, why does this feel more like a burden than a blessing? Today, I want to speak directly to those of you who might have felt like you grew up too fast. For those who were forced, not by choice, but by circumstance, to become the parent. You know what it's like to take on adult responsibilities long before your time, before you even understood what it meant to be a child in the first place. You might have stepped in to care for a sibling, to manage the emotions of a parent, or simply to hold everything together in a way that no child should have to. And I want to tell you, it's not your fault. What we're diving into today is a psychological pattern called parentification. And I promise you, it's not just a fancy term. It's a deeply ingrained, often invisible dynamic that explains why being the strong one came at such a steep cost. It's why you felt the weight of the world on your shoulders, even when no one asked you to carry it. And I want to help you understand why this happened, and more importantly, how it shaped who you are today. Trust me, there's so much more to uncover, and it's time to finally acknowledge the truth you've been carrying inside. What does mature for your age really mean? That word mature. You've heard it, haven't you? You've probably been called mature for your age more times than you can count. But let's pause for a moment. What does that word really mean? When they said you were mature, they weren't really describing your childhood, were they? They weren't talking about how smart you were or how talented you were. No, they were describing your role. They were telling you how well you played the part. You became the one who could read the room before anyone else even noticed the tension in the air. The emotional thermometer of your home, always adjusting to the needs and moods of others. You learned to manage conflict before you even understood what it meant to express your own feelings. You soothed anxieties that weren't yours to carry. You anticipated needs, you held your ground, and you kept the peace even when your own heart was aching. And for all of this, you were praised. You're so responsible. You're such a big help. It was a constant reassurance that you were doing things right, that you were the one holding it all together, making things work when no one else could. In a way, the praise felt good, didn't it? It validated you. It made you feel like you were needed, like you mattered. You wore that mature label proudly because it was the only way you knew how to earn love and attention. But here's the truth you might not have realized at the time. While you were busy being mature, you weren't busy being a child. You weren't allowed the freedom to explore, to play, to discover who you were meant to be. Instead, the energy that should have been spent growing, learning, and experiencing childhood joy was diverted into something much heavier, a full-time job. One that you didn't sign up for, but one you took on because you had to. And that job? Well, it took its toll, not just on your childhood, but on the way you show up in the world today. You learned early on that your role was to care for others, to anticipate their needs, to be the strong one. But no one taught you how to care for yourself. No one taught you how to ask for what you needed, how to let yourself be vulnerable. It's hard to admit, but this isn't just a turn of phrase. This is a profound psychological experience. It's the weight of responsibility you were never meant to carry, and it shapes you in ways you might not even realize yet. Understanding this, truly understanding it, is the first step toward reclaiming those parts of yourself that you had to lock away in order to survive. The parts of you that didn't get the chance to grow, to breathe, to simply be. Parentification, when childhood is stolen. This is where parentification comes in. You may not have heard the term before, but chances are you felt its effects deeply. Parentification is a psychological role reversal, a shift in the family dynamic where a child is forced to take on responsibilities that should never fall on their shoulders. Emotional, practical, sometimes both. It's not about helping out here and there or doing your part as a family member. That's normal. We all pitch in, right? A child setting the table, cleaning their room, that's part of growing up. We all have our chores, and that's fine. But when a child becomes the primary emotional caretaker for a struggling parent, that's a different story. When a child is expected to hold their parent up emotionally, to manage their feelings, their needs well, that's not just unfair. It's damaging. It's an emotional burden that no child should have to bear, yet so many do. Parentification can manifest in two main ways, and often they overlap, creating a perfect storm of emotional strain for a child who is just too young to fully understand what's happening. First, there's instrumental parentification. This is the more visible form. It's when a child is asked no, required to take on physical tasks that should belong to adults. They cook meals, they care for younger siblings, they manage household finances. These things might seem like typical chores at first glance, but when a child is shouldering the weight of these responsibilities regularly, it's a whole different situation. They might miss a friend's birthday party because they're stuck making dinner for the family. They might spend their weekends cleaning up the house instead of playing with their friends, learning new things, or just enjoying the simple, beautiful chaos of childhood. It's easy to overlook this kind of parentification, especially when society praises these children for being helpful or responsible. But what's really happening is that these children are becoming household managers, often at the expense of their own emotional development. And what do they get in return? Praise, yes, but also a loss of time for themselves, a loss of childhood, and as they grow older, a loss of the ability to simply relax and enjoy life without the constant sense of responsibility hanging over them. Then there's the more subtle but equally damaging form of parentification, emotional parentification. This is the kind that creeps up slowly, often without anyone even realizing it. This is when a child is not just expected to manage the household, but also to manage the emotions of the adults around them. The child becomes the parent's confidant, their therapist, the mediator in family arguments. Instead of getting to lean on other adults, the parent turns to their child for support, emotional support that should be coming from a partner, a friend, or even a counselor. And this is where the lines start to blur. It's almost impossible for the child to distinguish where their emotions end and their parents begin. The parent's anxiety becomes the child's anxiety. The parent's stress becomes the child's stress. The parent's emotional needs overshadow the child's, and the child learns that their own feelings don't matter as much as the parents'. Over time, this child learns a silent but devastating lesson. To be loved, they must suppress their own feelings and focus entirely on managing the feelings of others. It's insidious because this emotional burden is often carried silently. These children don't speak out, they don't complain, they just absorb it. They learn to carry it, thinking it's their job. They believe that their role in the family is to always be strong, always be the one to fix things. They become the emotional caretaker, even when they don't fully understand their own emotional needs. And that, my friend, is where the damage starts to take root. Because when you are too busy taking care of others, you forget how to take care of yourself. You become someone who, as an adult, struggles to know what your own needs are because you were never taught how to identify them. Your value becomes tied to how much you can do for others. And this pattern, once formed, is difficult to break. The lasting impact, how it shapes you. So, how do you know if this was your story? How do you recognize that the role you played in your childhood has shaped the person you've become today? Well, it's not about a single defining moment. It's about the quiet patterns, the subtle threads that wove their way through your childhood and that continue to run through your life now. These aren't flaws in your character. These are survival strategies, coping mechanisms you developed because the world you grew up in expected too much from you too soon. It often starts with a pervasive sense of responsibility for others. As a child, you were the emotional thermostat of your home. You felt the weight of every mood, every shift in the atmosphere, like you were walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace. You were the one to notice when things were off. When someone in the family was upset, you knew it before they said a word. You became hyper-aware of the emotional landscape, always adjusting yourself to it. And this doesn't just disappear when you grow up. As an adult, you might feel responsible for the happiness of your friends, your partner, even your co-workers. You might catch yourself thinking, if I don't do this, nobody else will. It's like you've taken on this unspoken responsibility for everyone's emotional well-being, and when you don't deliver, it feels like you're letting everyone down. But here's the thing. Your worth is not measured by how much you can carry for others. And yet for so many of us, we can't help but feel that way. It's ingrained in us, like a second nature. You might even feel guilty for taking time to care for yourself, because you've learned that self-sacrifice equals love. And that's where the trouble begins. This leads to something I call difficulty identifying your own needs. For so long, you've been so tuned into the needs of others that now, when someone asks you, "What do you want?" it feels almost impossible to answer. It's as if you've completely forgotten what it feels like to think about yourself. You're so accustomed to putting others first that your own desires, your own needs become almost invisible to you. It's a painful thing to realize, but it's true. When you've spent your whole life being the caretaker, the problem solver, the mediator, you forget what it's like to just be you, to simply exist without the weight of everyone else's emotions resting on your shoulders. Your voice, your feelings, they become secondary, and it's easy to start feeling like you don't even deserve to ask for what you want. From here, hyper-independence often takes root. You learned early on that the only person you could truly rely on was yourself. As a child, there was no one to lean on, so you figured it out on your own. And now, as an adult, that makes it incredibly difficult to ask for help. You don't trust that anyone will truly show up for you, because you've been burned before. You learned the hard way that you had to do it all. You had to be the one to hold it together. So you carry this burden silently, refusing to let anyone in. You tell yourself, I can handle it. I don't need anyone. I don't want to be a burden. You become your own island, self-sufficient but lonely. You can't ask for help because you're afraid that if you do, you'll be disappointed. You're afraid of being let down. And worse, you're afraid of being rejected for needing something, anything from someone else. This, my friend, is the cost of growing up too fast. The cost of being the strong one when you were just a child. It's not just about the burdens you carried, it's about what you've lost along the way. You've lost the ability to let others care for you. You've lost the freedom to express your own needs. And, most painfully, you've lost the part of yourself that was allowed to rest, to play, to be loved without having to earn it. But here's what I want you to understand. These patterns are not permanent. They are not who you are at your core. They are the survival strategies you created to get through a world that was too much, too soon. And that means, with time and effort, you can unlearn them. You can learn to identify your own needs again. You can trust others to show up for you. And, most importantly, you can start to let go of the belief that your worth is tied to how much you can give to others. The silent cost anxiety, people-pleasing, and burnout. And then there's the chronic people-pleasing and poor boundaries. You learned early on that your worth was tied to your usefulness. That's why, as an adult, saying no feels like a failure. You overextend yourself because the idea of setting a boundary of saying this is too much for me feels dangerous. You worry that it might lead to rejection. You're scared that if you stop taking care of everyone else, you won't be loved. And this leads to chronic anxiety. Growing up managing the emotional and practical needs of others can leave your nervous system in a constant state of high alert. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Chaos feels familiar, and relaxation can feel impossible. Why does this happen? The unseen forces. Now, you might be wondering, why does this happen? No parent intends to steal their child's youth. It's rarely malicious. But the reality is that it's a tragic consequence of a parent's own limitations or traumas. Maybe they were unable to meet your needs because they were struggling with their own. Parentification is often driven by things like parental illness or disability, mental health issues, or substance abuse. A parent consumed by addiction or depression might unconsciously turn to their child to fill a role they can't. And sometimes it's the result of parental immaturity or unresolved trauma. A parent who never received care themselves may unconsciously expect their child to fill that void. In other cases, cultural expectations can also play a role, especially for eldest daughters, who are often expected to take on significant caregiving roles. Healing, reclaiming your childhood. But here's the good news. You're not stuck with this. The past does not have to dictate your future. Healing is possible. The first step? Acknowledging and grieving the childhood you didn't get. It's not about blaming anyone, it's about validating your own experience. Learn to set boundaries. This will feel unnatural at first. But every time you say no, you're taking back your power. Reconnect with your inner child. The child you buried is still in there. Give yourself permission to play, to rest, to simply be. Cultivate self-compassion. When guilt arises, meet it with kindness. Remind yourself that your needs are important too. And lastly, seek professional support. A therapist can help you process the trauma of parentification and help you heal those emotional wounds. The journey of reclamation. The journey of healing is not about fixing something broken, it's about reclamation. It's about reparenting yourself. It's about learning that your worth doesn't need to be earned by taking care of everyone else. It's never too late to give yourself permission to live your own life. The child inside of you is still waiting to be seen. It's time to embrace her, to nurture her, and to finally let her play. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.